Chapter 6, Proving Ground. I thought I didn't have to prove myself. Gosh darn it all. Ugh, why couldn't I do it? I'd done it before. Why was it so hard now?
The more frustrated you get, the more difficult it will be to focus.
The more you keep telling me that, the more frustrated I'll get. Unfazed by me snapping at him, Ari continued to watch with something that seemed suspiciously like amusement. I see that smirk, sir. There was a small whisper of laughter from near the door, and I tightened my jaw, annoyed we'd somehow gathered an audience. And Ari hadn't bothered to shoo away the infantry and junior agents lurking. I turned my head that way, intending to give them what was probably not a very intimidating glare. Ari, just behind me, set his hands firmly on either side of my face and forced me to stare straight ahead.
Ignore them.
It's part of your training. You can't have distractions are around you. You still got to be able to perform, girl. You got this. Then make them leave.
We must all learn to focus through distractions. Currently, they're serving as part of your training.
See? They're serving as an annoyance.
Precisely. And you're allowing your frustration to become a hindrance. Instead of focusing on them, focus on destroying the target.
The last time I did one of these, I destroyed a building. While you were inside it, if you'll remember.
Then I suppose you must exhibit better control this time.
He said it as if it was easy. If Cybursts weren't difficult, everyone would be able to do them. Ugh, damn it. I let out a slow breath, trying to clear my head before another attempt. For better or worse, my training had been progressing fast. We'd moved from falling to fighting, and from simple clairvoyant awareness to telekinesis. Look at you go, girl. I wasn't sure if it was because there was a rush on getting me to a less embarrassing stage of training because of Syrah, or if this pace was the goal all along. Either way, Ari was pushing me hard. His specialty was teleportation, something he knew I could mimic, but he was worried whether I had the control to manage it without teleporting myself into a wall or something, so he decided to work on Cybursts instead. Theoretically, if I could get the hang of doing those without mass destruction, he reckoned I'd also have the control to handle learning teleportation. And so, here we were. But I wasn't having much luck. Rather than destroying anything, I could barely even make a dent in the target. To make matters worse, somehow word had gotten around that we were working on my notorious Cybursts. So, even though Ari reserved the room for private use, other agents had gathered to watch. Nice close-eye transition. I tried to shut their whispering out as I closed my eyes again and attempted to focus on my breathing. At least Ari had given me a solid foundation in his meditative techniques before we started working on this, but it was still distracting for there to be people in the door. I reflexively put up a reverse cage around myself to block out their presence. It had the immediate effect of dampening the prickly feeling of them watching me. Now I could focus my mind on my own psi waves. In my head, I perceived them like an image of glowing steam rolling off my body. I could see Ari's too, but with my reverse cage, his were faint and easy to ignore. Now, all I had to do was channel that energy towards the target. I opened my eyes at the same time I gave the energy a mental shove. It exploded away from me with enough force to make me recoil. A gasp sounded behind me. I panicked and tried to reach out to yank it all back. The resulting Cyburst hit the target, leaving another small dent, but not much more. My head felt like it would split from trying to cancel it like that. So that was the legendary Cyburst?
What is she doing?
If they're so confident, maybe one of them can stand up here and try to do it. Ari folded his arms, staring at the target thoughtfully for a moment.
Why did you try to cancel it? It started out much stronger than your other attempts.
I just panicked. It was stronger than I expected.
I understand this is all still new to you, but you need to learn to not be afraid of your abilities.
Easy for you to say.
Are you certain?
Ari folded his left arm against his torso and rested his right elbow in his hand, pressing his fingertips to his temple. His head angled downward, and he closed his eyes, tapping against the side of his face as he often did when he was thinking. He finally looked up again and turned towards the door. Aw, damn you! Damn you! That's rude!
Heidi, why don't you come and demonstrate?
She looked just as surprised as I was at that request.
I understand you've raised your psi enough to be able to release a psi burst of your own. Was I incorrect?
No, I can do it. I tried to catch his eye to at least glare at him, but he wasn't looking at me. Nah. Heidi joined us on the mat with a doubtful expression, taking position next to me. I'll admit, I felt a twinge of amusement at her expression. Not fun to be the center of attention, is it? I tried to quash the glee because I suspected she was about to outperform me anyway. And then it would be my turn to look foolish again. Just as I had, Heidi took a deep breath. She stared at the target intently, as if psyching herself up for what she was about to do. I retracted my reverse cage so I could view her psi waves more clearly. If I watched her this way, it might be easier to understand how what she did differed from what I was doing. I was a little surprised by how pale and thin her psi energy was. Ari was elite, and I was, well, a queen rank and all that, but the difference was striking. Especially since Heidi was supposed to be adept as an infantry. I didn't have much in the way of comparison, but I wondered if this was what normal psi looked like. It seemed like she didn't wait quite as long as I had before the burst of energy whirled away from her towards the target. Interesting. I couldn't tell if it was because her abilities were weaker, but it seemed she condensed it into a much tighter coil of energy than I did. I wonder if that's intentional or if she just has to compensate for the level of her psi. Either way, it hit the target, crinkling the metal like paper. It was definitely a stronger attack than mine, despite that my psi was greater than hers. I guess it was the difference between potential and experience. Heidi's eyes narrowed as a small, pleased smile formed. There were murmurs from the audience at the door. This is just a double-barreled lesson, really. It's going to help you. Like, you're gonna learn how to do a psi burst from having observed her. And Heidi's gonna learn that her experience doesn't make up for the potential that you have, and she might not be able to be a queen like she thinks she can be. It's not like I was particularly competitive, not in the sense of wanting to outdo other people rather than just doing my personal best. But somehow that really irritated me.
Thank you, Heidi.
I tried to tune everyone out as I studied the target, thinking about what Ari had said before, about how I couldn't be afraid of my own abilities. Heidi probably had complete confidence that psi burst would turn out the way she wanted. I didn't have the same confidence because I lacked her experience, and because last time had turned out badly. This wasn't the same situation as back then. I wasn't scared, confused, or under attack. But knowing I was capable of that level of destruction was frightening. If I condensed the psi the way Heidi did, then that would be enough to stop it from doing some kind of massive damage. A smaller spread of damage, if you will? We're both just like, That made sense. As I stood there thinking about it, Ari had Heidi return to the door. He leaned down to me again.
If you want to show them you're not an outsider, and that you belong in the role you've been given, now is your chance.
Wait, was the whole point of having her, of all people, do that to provoke me? Not really provoke. Encourage. In a way.
Try it one more time.
I'm lacking the confident trait. Great. I could try to give it one more shot. No, we're stubborn. Do it again. You will get it right this time. Fine. I would do it right this time. I definitely would not allow Heidi to best me in this. I understood why they were all watching and laughing at my struggle. As someone raised outside this group, I didn't fit in or meet their expectations. But if I had to be here, I wouldn't let myself be labeled an outsider. I'd do my best, and I would be respected for it. It was no different from doing my best at my studies. I shut my eyes and refocused myself. Forget Heidi. Forget Ari. Forget everyone. I didn't have to prove this to anyone but myself. And I didn't even have to prove it to myself, because I knew I could do it. I'd been the top in my studies, and I would be the top here. As soon as the mental image of my psi energy crystallized, I visualized a narrow tunnel between myself and the target. Condense it down as far as it will go so it won't run wild. Coil it up tighter. Ooh, fancy. I pushed the energy away from my body with as much force as I could muster, and I didn't try to pull it back. This time it shot away from me with enough force it nearly knocked me down. It struck the target hard. There was a flash that blinded me. I flinched, holding up a hand to shield my eyes. Behind me, there were a few panicked cries, scuffling of people moving around, then soft murmurs. But the ceiling wasn't coming down on our heads, so there was that. When I opened my eyes again, Ari was standing in front of me as if shielding me from something. He was looking over his shoulder at the target. What? I peered around him, freezing when I saw the damage that I'd done. Well, I mean, you pushed her, she did it. There was little left of the target beyond a twisted and smoking bit of scrap on the floor. The wall behind it had a hole in it, with cracks spreading out like a spider web from a massive scorch mark. There was debris scattered around the room, remnants of the target, and probably bits of the wall as well. On the other side of the hole were a few concerned faces peering into our training room. I'm just picturing that scene from The Incredibles when Bob punched his boss through all the walls and everyone's just like looking through the hole like, I glanced up at Ari with an awkward smile. I did it? Oops.
I suppose I encouraged you to do it.
Oh, so it's your fault this time. I can accept that.
All things considered, we should be glad you only destroyed part of one wall. And from the looks of things, you may have finally proved your point to some of those doubting you.
Nice. Ari turned back to where the others were while I took a water break. I'm thirsty.
Now, if the rest of you don't mind, I'd like to continue our lesson in private.
There were a few groans, but no one argued as they all filed out into the hall. I wasn't one bit disappointed to see them go. As soon as we were alone, I gave him the most annoyed scowl I could muster. You could have done that way sooner and I wouldn't have complained.
As I said, it's necessary to learn to focus even with distractions.
Heidi already hates me enough without you giving her even more reason to.
Perhaps. But I merely observe. It worked.
I glared at him. You know what? Vaughn was right. You are a brat. His lips turned up at the corners. He's like, yeah, a little.
Perhaps.
I hope I'm not interrupting. I was startled by the unfamiliar voice by the door, but Ari didn't appear perturbed by the unexpected intrusion. As usual. Someday I hope I get to see him at least a little surprised. Oh, hello. Who are you? The woman standing in the doorway was someone I'd never met or seen before. She looked to be in her 80s, perhaps, with faded blonde hair and bright blue eyes. She looks fantastic for being in her 80s. I mean, I know the 1.5-year time difference, but still, she looks pretty great. An agent? I didn't get that sense from her, but something about her felt familiar. There were quite a few junior agents leaving just now. If I'd known your training sessions were public, I'd have come by earlier.
They are not. However, we managed to gather an audience today.
It looks like I missed something exciting, though. Is this why you practice in one of these self-repairing rooms?
Most of the stronger ranked agents do, and this was a normal session for us.
She smiled slightly as she came further into the room. Ariel, you're forgetting your manners. You haven't introduced us yet. Honestly, I thought you'd gotten better at this kind of thing. Ari lifted an eyebrow, tilting his head just as if it only just occurred to him that was a thing he should do. I'm like... She gave me Magnus vibes, and I'm like, his mom? And it's the same last name, so she's related to him in some way. I mean, it could be his mom, could be his grandma. Could be his sister, I don't know. I don't know how old Magnus is. I forgot.
Morgan, this is Charisse Ulrich. She is a member of the council.
A council member? What was she doing here, then? And... Ulrich? Mom, okay.
Correct. She is Magnus's mother.
That must be why she seemed familiar. It's a pleasure to meet you, Morgan. I apologize for not coming to greet you sooner. I was worried when I heard you were struggling with your sudden recruitment. I thought it might be best to give you time to become more settled. Magnus seemed to think that might be the case by now. Thank you. I appreciate you thinking about my comfort. It's nice to meet you too. I hadn't interacted with anyone from the council before, so I wasn't sure how to treat her. They were the governing body of Endgame, after all. Ariel, as much as I hate to disrupt your session, would you mind leaving us for a bit? I wish to speak to Morgan alone. For the first time since I'd known him, Ari hesitated, but it was only a moment. He nodded to me slightly and, without another word, strode out the door. It slid shut behind him. My, he's rather protective of you, isn't he? Is he? Well, I suppose it's easier to see for those of us who have known him longer. She took a seat on a bench and patted it, indicating I should come over and join her. I did so with hesitation, unsure what this was about. I've been keen to read your daily training reports for the last few weeks, Morgan. And I must say, I'm impressed with your progress in such a short amount of time. When you started, you knew almost nothing about Psi abilities. And now you're creating Psi bursts of that magnitude. She nodded towards the target and damage to the wall. I'm not sure it's anything to be impressed by. Even some infantry are capable of this much. She laughed at that. Only if they're exceptional. And you're interesting, not for your current level, but for your growth potential and the speed at which you're learning. Ari's an excellent teacher. If I've learned anything, it's because of that. Oh, come now, there's no need to be modest. If your school records are anything to go by, you've always been a hard worker. It's the only way to get by in New Albion. That is true, I suppose. This system is ruthless when it comes to those who aren't at the top. Ruthless is one way to put it. There is a big push to always work hard. Even so, we were a little concerned with your ability to catch up with your training. With some other factions flaunting their queen-ranked Espers, some of our members were worrying about our inability to locate one. Our ability to maintain the peace on this planet relies on our remaining the strongest. Or there are those that believe that way. You aren't one of them? Let's say that I believe strength is not always about brute force. Though I don't regret that we brought you into the fold. I wasn't sure how I felt about being considered brute force. Charisse was silent for a moment before she continued. And how are you settling in here aside from training? Well, it's getting easier. I'm glad to hear that. I'm relieved the incident around your recruitment didn't impact your ability to work with Magnus and the others. I know it was difficult. But I hope you understand the Council made that call in the hopes it would be best for everyone, even if it didn't go entirely as planned. The Council gave that order? Based on the recommendation of some of our bishops, yes. Magnus told me he made the call. Oh. She sighed softly, shaking her head. I was surprised by the sadness that flitted over her features. He always tries to shoulder everything alone. But no, it was the Council. None of the God were thrilled with the plan, including my son. Interesting. But I couldn't help but wonder why she was here. Not just to chat about her son and my progress, I was sure. Yeah, there's anything that mother and son have in common, it's that they take a little while to kind of get to the point. And it's always like, they're trying to, like, lure you into, like, you know, you get comfortable, like, they're checking in on you, and then,
here's the real serious thing that I came to talk to you about.
May I ask why you wanted to talk to me today? Is it that difficult to believe I wish to get to know you a little? No, it isn't that. I just assumed there was a specific reason. Well, it isn't as if you're wrong, though I do like to speak with our agents sometimes. The Council is too inclined to stay shut up in our offices and meetings, making decisions about people we never speak to. I don't think it hurts to get out every so often and interact with the agents personally. She laughed, a regretful sound at odds with how I'd come to imagine the Council. But, unfortunately, I had another reason for coming here today. Shock. I know you've been updated on the situation on Sierra. Yes. I was told the Queen's Guard might be... Have they reached some sort of ceasefire? No. There has been a new development. You'll be receiving a briefing file soon enough, but I wanted to talk to you about it first. Morgan, there may be illegal experimentation going on somewhere on Sierra, the sort we would have to put an end to for everyone's safety. Experimentation of what? Weapons? Or espers? Experimentation regarding espers. As soon as she said that, there was an uncomfortable pang in my gut. Why are you telling me this? There is a group of researchers arriving to Endgame from a small lab there. It happens from time to time. After all, our research division is one of the leading sources on psionics planet-wide. Much of our research is classified, but some is available to the public. We occasionally have teams that come to look at those journals or talk to our scientists. This group arrived to Arcalis about a day before the blockade went up, and has been touring various facilities on the planet known to be doing studies into the fairy phenomenon. Oh no. I already had a feeling I knew where this was heading. We believe they may have ties to the dissidents, and may be involved in the alleged experimentation on Sierra. She paused, giving me a long, careful look. Is something the matter? I know someone who was researching espers on Sierra. Magnus and I have discussed him, and Magnus said he was coming here. I see. In that case, you can guess what I will say next. I know very little about what Trent Erickson was doing on Sierra, but his lab was being funded by the Triad. Officially, yes. However, 2 workers of that facility have been arrested in connection to the current revolt. One of them exhibited symptoms of burnout despite not being an Esper. Have I read about burnout before? We did fade, for sure. Burnout is a medical condition usually only suffered by Espers. In its most severe form, it involves a complete and total shutdown of the phoric system, and is usually permanent. However, burnout is described as a spectrum and can sometimes result in temporary damage that can be overcome, partially or entirely, with therapy. There are scattered and rare instances of burnout appearing in non-espers who somehow manage to damage their phoric systems. There are usually extenuating circumstances at play, often involving things like nano-overgrowth. Espers who have already begun to exhibit fade symptoms are usually at higher risk of burnout, but it can afflict any Esper that overuses their abilities. You'll receive the full details in your briefing. However, there are concerns about the lab these two are associated with. Given the situation there, our ability to look into this is limited. It could make things worse or make our relief efforts more difficult if either side feels threatened by an investigation. So, we decided it was wiser to begin planetside now that the opportunity has presented itself. What exactly are you planning for Trent's group? An interrogation? I can't imagine him getting involved with something like a rebellion. He's the sort that cares more about his work than anything. Yeah, but ever since we found out about the whole Trent thing, well, not from the very beginning, but like when we talked to Magnus about it specifically, the timing of him reaching out to Morgan with the birthday card is a little interesting. Because I'm like, what if he took some kind of sample from her that he could run to find out what she is? And maybe he's been able to take something from Morgan to start doing experimentation on people to turn them into fairies or something. You know? I don't know. I don't really have like a fully fleshed out theory where I can explain it properly, but something along those lines, if that makes sense to anyone. I'm just like, I'm a little sus on Trent. I don't trust Trent as far as I can throw him. I haven't met him, but I don't trust that guy. He wouldn't do anything to jeopardize it. Perhaps. But he also isn't the only one on this research team or at this lab. We don't intend to interrogate anyone. We're hoping you can use your connection with him to get close to the group. Find out if there's anything to these allegations. Your bishops haven't seen anything that indicates what's going on? Unfortunately, no. There's an entire star system and future for them to monitor. It would be convenient if they could always see what we wish them to see. But it doesn't work that way. And they've yet to observe anything specific regarding this matter. I don't mind trying to find something out. I mean, I can't imagine it matters if I mind. If I'm getting a briefing report, that makes us official, doesn't it? Yes. But this is a tougher first assignment in some respects than you might have hoped for. I wanted to discuss it personally first. I think it'll be fine. I just worry I won't be able to learn anything useful. I'm sure you'll do your best. Of course. I always do. I'm glad to hear it. And now, I believe I've taken enough of your time. I'll let you get back to training. Before you go, was there something else? It's just... I've been trying to get permission to contact my family. ARI had said he would look into it, but I hadn't heard anything else about it. So it wouldn't hurt to ask, right? It's been several weeks. Surely, by now, things are settled enough I can get outside communications back? I don't see why they haven't restored it already. It's been a busy few weeks, so it's possible those requests fell through the cracks. I'll check on it for you and see what I can do. Thank you. I would really appreciate it. I'm sure you miss them. I do. And I'm worried about them. I have a brother also posted on Zero right now. He's in an outlying settlement, but I would like to be certain he's okay. Of course. I'll look into it straight away. She stood and smoothed the wrinkles from her clothes. I look forward to continuing to observe your growth, Morgan. And welcome to Endgame, even if it's late. I stood as well and walked her to the door. Just outside in the hall, I was surprised to find Ari standing there, just waiting for us to finish. Probably so we could jump straight back into our training session. More like a cat on hot bricks. Honestly, this guy. Charisse broke into a smile when she saw him. Ariel, have you been waiting out here all this time?
I have nothing else scheduled for this block of time. Where else would I go?
You could have gone to wait in the lounge.
There was no need. I was fine waiting here.
Were you that worried about her?
I was not concerned about you wanting to speak with Morgan.
Is that so? She laughed as if she didn't believe him, and when she passed him, she gave his arm a slight squeeze. Be sure to watch over her well.
I intend to.
And with that, Charisse was gone, leaving Ari and I to get back to our training session. Ari didn't ask what we spoke about at all, and my mind was too full of everything we talked about to focus well for the rest of the day. I was standing in my shower with my back to the streaming water, letting it drum down over the sore muscles there. Our workouts had increased in intensity as we also started branching out into developing my Psi. It meant our sessions had doubled in length, with us spending the first half on physical training and the latter half on Psi training. I wasn't sure which was more exhausting. I stretched and finally turned off the water, stepping out of the shower. Tomorrow, I was sure he'd expect me to do even better than I had today. I didn't want to think about it, though if we gathered another audience, I would throw them out personally. I wrapped myself in a towel and grabbed another for my hair as I went to finish drying off and get dressed. I had just poured myself a cup of tea and flopped on the sofa when there was a soft ding inside my head. A message notification? I pulled it up, expecting the briefing file Charisse had promised earlier. When I saw the message with my mother's name above it, I bolted upright, sending the cup of tea flying. I don't blame you. Ah! I flailed at it frantically with both hands, and it stopped midair. The cup tilted several feet above the ground, with most of the tea frozen in its attempt to escape the cup and splash all over my rug. Well, that looks strange. In the middle of trying to scoop the liquid back into the cup while spilling as little as possible, my door chimed. I mean, that's a pretty handy thing, Morgan. It startled me enough that I lost focus, and a few splatters of tea headed straight for the ground, as if suddenly remembering gravity existed. Oh, great. I set the cup down and grabbed my pants, which I still hadn't bothered to put on. Making a mental note to get a towel to clean the spilled tea, I finished dressing and answered the door, unsurprised to find it was Ari. Whoa! How many outfits do you have? Every time I'm just like shook. Green is definitely your color. Brings out your eyes very nicely. Mostly because besides Ari and Vaughn, no one else visited. Caleb, you rude. Hi, come in.
You seem... Did something good happen?
Yes! I grabbed his hand and pulled him into my apartment when it didn't seem he would come in on his own. He gave me a bewildered look that made me feel almost bad I must never seem happy to see him. Hey, you finally got him surprised. Good job. Charisse seems to have done something about my net permissions. I just got a message from Mom.
Ah. Was that something the two of you spoke about earlier?
It came up towards the end, and she said she'd look into it.
I'm glad to hear that it was taken care of. Is your mother well?
I don't know. I haven't read it yet. I just got the notification and sort of spilled my tea in my excitement. I expertly avoided a mess courtesy of telekinesis. Ari's gaze traveled to the teacup on the arm of the sofa, then the few spilled drops on the floor. Almost avoided. The door chime startled me.
I apologize for interrupting then.
No, it's fine. Anyway, you can sit if you like. I left him there and went to get a cloth from the kitchen so I could clean up the mess.
It's... alright.
Sit! He didn't seem like he was going to, but after a moment's deliberation, he must have changed his mind. He sat carefully on the sofa and watched me.
Have you received the briefing file for...
There was another notification right as he said that, and I pulled up the screen to check. It just arrived, actually.
I see. I was also sent a copy. Caleb and Vanessa as well, I assume.
Dropping the cloth on the bar, I joined Ari on the sofa. So that's what you stopped by to discuss?
Correct. Though, if you haven't read it yet, there's not much to discuss.
Well, Charisse went over the basics with me. There are concerns about experimentation. The lab the researchers are with may have ties to the rebellion on Syrah. I need to try to find out if anyone in this group knows anything about it.
Morgan, are you comfortable with this assignment? I understand you know one of the researchers.
New. I haven't spoken to him or heard from him in a year. Not since he left for Syrah.
Were you classmates?
In a manner of speaking, we dated for 2 years. And lived together for 6 months. Ari's bewildered face like, what? You were dating? Oh no, he looks so sad! Ari, stop looking so sad, please. My heart.
I... see.
Is everything alright? Ari frowned, looking away. I noticed him clasping his hands together, tapping on the left one with the other.
I did not realize it was that close a relationship.
It's not close anymore, if it ever was. He left a year ago, and I haven't heard from him since. People who are close don't break up with each other that way.
Can it be there are some unpleasant feelings there?
There were. There still are, I guess. Maybe, I don't know. He sent me a card the day before I joined Endgame. He said he would be on the surface soon and he wanted to meet. I wasn't planning to take him up on it.
So he reached out to you after a year of silence. Is that not... odd?
That's what I'm saying. Sometimes people do things like that, I guess. Maybe he just felt bad about disappearing without a word? Ari's squint is sending me, because that's exactly how I felt about it. I'm like, suspicious timing is suspicious. Actually, Trent is the only person who was aware I was an Esper. Not that he realized my rank or anything, but he suspected I might be an F-class. He knew my tests had come back negative for any physiological markers.
If you haven't read the briefing, then you don't know they believed the unregistered Espers on Syrah were fairies when the reports began to appear.
That was Trent's point of interest. The lab he was interning at was doing research on them, and of course that's why they're coming here.
Correct. F-class are still a minority in Endgame, but we possess the leading research on the phenomenon. Besides you and myself, there are only a few dozen others. Not all of us are publicly known to be such, though.
So you know she's a fairy, even though she never told you.
My status is something of an open secret, and most of what Endgame knows about fairies comes from observing my development.
Observing his development? That made him sound like a science experiment.
All that aside, we're not sure what is going on with the Espers on Syrah. They certainly show elements of being fairy Espers. However, the one taken into custody ended up not being an Esper at all.
I'll read the full report as soon as possible.
After, I hope, you read and respond to your mother's message. The report can wait, but I'm sure your mother would like to hear from you as soon as possible.
Aww. See, this guy's not completely clueless. He understands that mom is more important than briefing and work. So he's not a complete robot.
And you've waited for this message for weeks. I'm sure you want to read it soon.
Yes. After that.
Good. I'm pleased to hear your request was finally granted.
Me too.
We'll still be continuing your training going forward, but may need to adjust our schedule due to your other assignment. And I'll also be monitoring you as you engage with these researchers.
They're still overworking you, I see.
I wasn't specifically ordered to monitor you, given you'll be filing daily reports. I'm merely concerned.
We've had this talk. Worry more about yourself.
Sometimes it feels as if you worry about me enough for the both of us.
Because you don't worry about yourself at all. It's annoying.
I apologize. I'll try to be less annoying.
Good. Because that isn't even the only annoying thing you do.
In that case, perhaps you can expound on all my annoying qualities over dinner.
Well, damn, that was smooth. Yeah, I don't blame you for your mind blanking. My mind blanked when he said that. Did he just... What? No. No. No, no, no. Ari and I had had dinner several times. Don't freak out. It doesn't mean anything. Probably.
Unless you have other plans.
No! It's fine. Dinner is fine.
Is there a problem then?
No problem. You really need to work on your wording, though.
Is there another way to ask someone to dinner?
Maybe we'll talk about that over dinner.
Then I'll leave you to rest for now, but I'll return at 19 o'clock.
Sure. I'll see you then.
Very good.
He smiled. He stood and almost smiled as he headed for the door. That's a smile. I'm counting that as a smile. I don't care. I followed behind him, mentally kicking myself for how he got my heart pounding. For a moment, I forgot where I was or who I was dealing with. Who am I? What's happening? And when I was alone again, I let out a little happy squeal and curled up on the sofa to read my mother's message and finally reply to her. I needed to find a way to thank Cherise for that. Maybe I'd ask Ari about that during dinner as well.